Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to follow up on yesterday's post about just the amount of technology that's in school, really, and it's not going to great use. So, yeah, £1 billion has been spent. I actually checked the data because even I thought it was a bit crazy. So, yesterday I said £1 billion had been spent in 10 years by UK schools. I checked the data, it's actually only 5 years, which is even more crazy. So, £1 billion of technology in schools in 5 years. And I talked a little bit about why it's not getting any traction, why that's not improving student outcomes. There's no measurable impact of the technology making a difference. So tonight I just wanted to talk about a little bit the reasons why I've seen it's not impactful, and that comes down to training. You know, the teachers in UK schools just aren't getting access to the training that they need to make the technology work for them. Um, and the schools out there who are doing great things at technology, they know who they are, and they're online, and they've got a presence out there. But the difference that I found in these schools, because I've visited a lot of them, and it's the fact that training and support is right at the top of the hierarchy of how they're supporting their staff. They've got a dedicated person running the project. If it's iPads, for example, or if they've moved to Google, they've got someone who's a head of learning and development, head of technology, a role around that. And in those schools, you find that every single week teachers have got good access to high quality learning. They've got support networks in there, and that's exactly what makes a difference in these schools. And that's why they're the outliers. And that's why there's only a handful. Maybe 10, 20 that I've met over the past 4 or 5 years that I've been working across UK education. Um, and yeah, so it's really about teacher training. So if we're going to turn the tide going to turn this tide on just chucking technology into the classroom and not getting any benefit from it, then we need to start prioritizing training our teachers properly. And that first of all means actually, so schools putting money into this pot. One of the things I when I visit schools and I see them, and we talk through the problems they've got with technology and ways they can improve that. The first thing they look for is another technological solution that's going to improve the problems they've got with iPads or Google or smart boards or wherever it is. They're looking for another platform or another piece of software or the next hardware that's going to save them. And it's simply not the case. It's back to the basics. You've got to just train your staff. But when I bring this up with schools, the response is always the same. There's no money in the pot to train staff. And this is actually crazy. £1 billion in the past 5 years has been spent on hardware, but there's no money around to train staff. So we've really got to get the basics right. And today I was just looking at some research. So the Education Policy Institute is an awesome website that collates a lot of international research on what's happening in education and what we can learn from other countries. And I think that's one of the keys, is that we can pick some really interesting things out from what's happening globally. I remember a long time ago, I was looking at other education systems in the Western world, because I know there's this big thing at the moment to contrast it against education systems in Asia, so Shanghai and Japan and Singapore. The government are going and looking at these, but I think the culture is so different. It's quite hard to import what's happening there, bring it over here, and have that similar level of success. But a really interesting one to look at is actually Canada. So Canada's education system is very similar to ours, but the big difference that they have is that 10% of their school budget goes into training their staff. So that's a big chunk. In the UK, we spend 0.5% of our school budgets on training teachers. So it's pretty crazy. And yeah, just last month, let me find the right thing here. So every couple of years, the OECD run what they call TALIS, so Teaching and Learning in International Survey, and the last one's just come through. And they looked at 36 countries around the world, and they contrast it, and then they can see what trends are there, and see what's going on. And so the interesting one was, let me just pull this up. So English teachers spent an average of 4 days on CPD over the 2015 year, so only 4 days, and this is much lower than the average. So the average across the countries they measured was actually 10.5 days. So we're not even halfway to the average. We're actually one of the lowest. Shanghai, which consistently comes near the top of international education rankings, they spend 40 days a year, 40 days of CPD for their teachers a year that they get, and it pays off. But it's not all just about money when it comes to training. So you can put the money into the system if you want. The money's there. It's just up to schools to start reallocating that. But the bigger challenge is actually getting the time. So you've got to find time to train teachers. And at the moment, we're very focused around inset days in UK education. September, Easter, the January one, which is coming up soon. And what we actually need to do is get more visits in throughout the year. But to do that, we need to reduce workload because teachers just do not have time at the moment to sit in training sessions. Or, even if they do, I don't think they probably want to in many cases because they've got, marking or planning or feedback or evidencing to do. And one of the other interesting things from the Talents report was that schools who use ICT effectively are saving on average, so per member of staff is saving about 4.7 hours per week, that was the stat, over a school who doesn't use ICT in the day-to-day running of school. So that's incredible. If we take the average, so the average teacher works about 50 hours a week, is what the research says. So if you use ICT effectively, you're almost saving 10% of your time each week, from your workload. You're delivering the same, you're delivering to the same standard as what the research is saying, but you're saving that much time. So I wanted to just talk to you about how you actually go about using ICT and technology to save that workload. And there's three areas that you should be looking at. So the first one is giving staff new capability. So when staff have new technology tools, they can work in new ways. So, for example, let's look at if we were to digitize assessment, and we can talk about that in detail another time, but if we digitize assessment rather than marking in books, that is a use of technology that gives staff brand new capabilities. The benefit of that is that it improves the productivity of the school. So, the benefits of it being digital is it's quicker, it's faster, it's easier to access. It was about 2 years ago now that I ran a project with a school in Liverpool, a secondary school, and I wanted to test this because I'd seen a lot of research about it. So went in, we digitized assessment, and after 5 weeks, the assessment cycle moved from, it was 14 days for a student to get his work back. We reduced that to just 48 hours. So that was pretty incredible. But what happened was the teachers then started, organically reinvesting that time into lessons. So after the end of that project, student outcomes went up. At the end of that year, the GCSE year group we ran that with, expected progress rose by 25%. And that's not all responsible for technology, but technology played a big part of that in that project, because staff had essentially 10 more evenings over a 2-week period to reinvest in learning, and that really showed in the level of support that the students got. So we give them new tools, we improve the capability of teachers. Those tools are very targeted about improving productivity for the teachers so they can do things faster, better, easier, or cheaper. And then this should lead to better consistency gains. So in that case, because we digitize assessment, everything become a lot more transparent. So that the head of department, for example, could instantly log onto the system and he could see everything that was going on. We could leave feedback. Students could see group feedback more easily. They could communicate with one another. So consistency and transparency really improved across the school. And the benefit of consistency, and this one's really key, is that consistency is the magic element in improving a school. The difference between a good teacher and an average one for a student is up to a year's progress, which is crazy. And until we change that, then you really can't control quality until you can control consistency. Because if something different's happening in the classroom down the road, down the hall, the variance is, you just can't control that. And all the research out there, they've gone away and looked at this. The Sutton Trust have looked at it. There's been a lot of studies in Canada and America. The difference, so when we talk about improving the education system, we think about we need to make all the schools better, bring all the schools up in the area. The actual biggest challenge is about improving the consistency between classrooms, because the difference between a classroom and another classroom in the same school is actually bigger than the difference between a school and another school in the same area. So until we get classrooms at a similar level within same schools, we don't really even want to be looking at it on a school level, because we need to go more granular. And I think one of the challenges there is actually the attitude of teachers, as you've mentioned, Baiju. There's this tendency to look at technology as this magic bullet, but it's just not. Put into schools effectively, it can really improve things. And as long as you're sticking to those 3 rules, you improve capability of staff, you look to improve the productivity of the school, and that will drive up the consistency of lessons. You will improve results. But if you just keep putting it in and you don't plan for it and you don't support it, and you're not training teachers as what's happening at the moment, then it shouldn't be surprised that technology is becoming confusing, it's ineffective, and we're wasting so much money on it. So the one thing I want you to take away from this video is actually, so before you go out and start buying more technology, so divide that pot of money up. You might have a £10,000 budget, you might have a £100,000 budget, but put a chunk of that aside, and what I'd say, put a chunk of 20 to 25% of it aside for just training teachers, because that's how much it takes. The schools who excel with technology, when you look at the figures, they are spending about 25% of their project spend just on training teachers, and usually that's in the form of a dedicated deputy head in the school or assistant head teacher coming in and just driving that project, and they will command a salary of 40 to 60,000 pounds depending on where they are. If it's a one-to-one iPad program, 200,000 pounds, it's about 25%. So it doesn't matter if you're spending £10,000 or £100,000 or £10 million. Put a big chunk of money aside, 25%, and spend it on your teachers, and you'll reap the rewards of that. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to finish on that, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, guys.